Union of the Unknowns, a podcast dedicated to the exploration of modern culture, presents a weekly digest of current events that may have slipped past your radar. This is not your mama's news. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Not Your Mama's News, presented by the Union of the Unknowns. I am your host tonight, Keelthor. With me are my fellow unknowns. Over here, we have a woman of high sophistication, Ashley Think Change Repeat.
Hello, how are you all?
And we have a true Sheila from the land down under, Stella Q.
Who happens to visually be actually down under. Hello.
Yes.
Good day.
Or so we are led to believe.
That is true.
Yep.
I think we're all standing on our head, personally.
I do too, and we've never seen it otherwise.
Nope.
In any case, on Not Your Mama's News, we try to bring you high quality news and information from around the world to showcase the clown world in which we live. So tonight, I'd like to go with some U.S. news, international potential, or technically maybe because of the topic or whatever. Ashley's got one. Let's hear it.
All righty. So I'm going to be bringing up my screen here, so bear with me. But the story that we are going to be talking about from my perspective is the Derek Chauvin stabbing. Now, you may think, why do I care that Derek Chauvin was stabbed? He was the guy that killed George Floyd, a true American hero. And I would say,
yeah, Ashley, tell us why you think that.
Yeah, I would say, well, maybe, but maybe not. So what we're going to do is kick it off with a little, and you know how I feel about Fox News, but in this case, I thought this was a fairly succinct summary. I'm playing it on 1.25 speed, and it's just under 3.5 minutes anyway. So we'll kick it off with that, and then we'll get into it.
Fox News alert, shocking new details in the attempted murder of America's most high-profile inmate. Last Friday, Derek Chauvin was shivved 22 times in the library by another inmate. And now we know who the other inmate was. His name is John Turskak. He's 52, and he's already served 27 years of his 30-year sentence. And with 3 years left until freedom, apparently decided, I'm going to murder somebody. Turskak is also a member of the Mexican Mafia. And are you ready? An FBI informant. The complaint says Turskak at first denied wanting to kill Chauvin. And then the complaint says the Mexican Mafia guy waived his Miranda rights when the FBI agent showed up to interview him. First of all, why is the FBI conducting the interview? The FBI only shows up to prison murders as if someone's ordered a hit, or if the perp or the victim was still informing, or all of the above. And why does a guy who knows the criminal justice system waive his Miranda rights? And wait until you hear what the FBI says he confessed to. It's just too perfect. The FBI claims that the Mexican Mafia guy wanted to murder Chauvin on Black Friday to symbolically avenge Black Lives Matter. So let me get this straight. The Mexican Mafia member who poisoned blacks his whole career with drugs and who was incarcerated during the Black Lives Matter movement is a social justice warrior. And anybody who knows anything about prison knows the Mexicans stay with the Mexicans, the blacks stay with the blacks, and the whites stay with the whites. Mexican inmates don't just start murdering white inmates to show solidarity with black inmates. Maybe. But here's what's mysterious. Turskak is listed as white, and the origin of his name is Croatian. Now, how many Croatians do you know in the Mexican Mafia? I didn't know the Mexican Mafia was so diverse. So this woke Croatian, Mexican mobster FBI informant, has been suddenly moved to a new federal prison. For whose protection exactly? We're not sure. And Turskak's history with the FBI is fascinating. He flipped on the Mexican mob back in the late 90s and helped the FBI lock up more than 40 of his fellow gangsters. He admitted to carrying out a number of crimes while working as an undercover FBI informant, but was furious during his sentencing and told the judge the FBI made him do it. Quote, I didn't commit those crimes for kicks. I did them because I had to if I wanted to stay alive. I told that to the FBI agents, and they just said, do what you have to do.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
Wow. That's a lot.
That is a lot. So I wanted to give a brief timeline of how these events transpired, because that's odd too. So Derek Chauvin, we know what he was about, and if you've seen some of the episode that we did with Miriam Hynine, she gives a pretty good amount of information about why that story is suspicious. I've learned a little bit more since then, but I'm just going to do a quick timeline since then. So, as of Monday, November 20th, 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal by former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin of his conviction for the murder of George Floyd. So that happened on Monday, the 20th. Then, leading up to that, Minnesota's top court in July denied the request to review the case, prompting his appeal to the Supreme Court. And apparently, they had, according to Miriam, some decent legs to stand on. First of all, we know this was a super high profile international case, and yet they refused to even move it to a different jurisdiction. If you're familiar with the OJ Simpson case, that got moved from Brentwood, was the neighborhood that happened. They ended up doing it in downtown LA. So in this particular instance, that should have at least been a consideration. And then there was also something about another juror that had potentially attended some of these anti-police rallies, as they were referred to. So Miriam wrote about that on her Substack on November the 24th, which was Thursday. Then on November the 25th, which is Black Friday, Derek Chauvin was stabbed 22 times by another inmate. It took a little bit of time for the who of that to come out. There was also quite a bit of ambiguity as to whether Derek was alive or dead. But certainly people in the truth community were suspicious right away. So that happened. Derek had been housed at the Federal Correctional Institute in Tucson, Arizona, which is a medium security prison. And I did a little looking into what does that even mean, right? Are medium security prisons typically very safe? And just looking for if this was an anomaly. Now, I happened to find a website that I thought was quite good, federalcriminaldefenseattorney.com, and they were willing to, they had a good layout of what these different, basically they're working as consultants with people who may have a loved one in prison, helping to have a consequence.
Sorry to interrupt. I think the medium security prison is only there in order, the restriction is they can't put rappers in a medium security prison.
It's got to be high security. Okay.
Well,
I'm
no, because they're all either Lil or Big.
And they don't fit in with medium.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the technical definition of it.
I didn't see that in my research, but I bet you're right. So I was curious about the safety, and this website was pretty thorough, and they offer consultations to people who may have family members to try to guide them through that process. So according to them, there are 5 levels of prison, which is minimum, low, medium, high, and administrative. So a medium security entails strengthened perimeter fencing, higher staff to inmate ratio, and enhanced security controls over inmates. And inmates are housed in cells.
I think there's one above that, isn't there? There's the oh my god level.
Supermax.
Right. Yeah.
I think so. Now, I didn't have all the time to do a deep dive on this because this subject alone is truly fascinating. But yes, I was curious about that myself, Stella, did they leave off Supermax? But maybe that's a more rare occurrence. I don't know.
I think that's, probably dead men tell no lies.
Exactly.
There's many little mole tunnels that come off these rabbit holes, isn't there?
Oh, big time. Because I'll tell you that Ted Kaczynski and Terry Nichols, who were both involved in significant news events here in the States, the Oklahoma City bombing, and obviously Ted Kaczynski, Uncle Ted, they were in Supermax prisons. So I think you're exactly right. Those are people that they don't want being talked to by other people.
Martin Bryant, Port Arthur is another one.
Okay. See, it's always, So anyway, in this case, that was the sort of the layout. And then, as I said, my question was, how common is crime at this level of a prison? So according to this website that I looked at, they said that medium security can be a mixed bag. Quote, some are relatively easy and safe institutions while others are incredibly violent. So it wouldn't be that odd for Derek to have gotten stabbed. I don't think. And then what types of inmates? And according to the site, they house all manner of federal inmates, and there are no specific medium security prison crimes. So you could have violent criminals and some less violent offenders. It sounds like it's sort of a little of this and a little of that. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed that an incarcerated person was assaulted at the Federal Correctional Institute Tucson on November the 24th. But it was vague. So Miriam had called them as a journalist, and basically she just got transferred into oblivion and no one helped her ever. They didn't acknowledge anything about it. So they ended up sending her an email later. She must have emailed them as well, that they were not providing the name of the victim. Of course, it did end up coming out that Derek Chauvin was the victim. And then supposedly he is going to be okay, that he's back at the prison and not hurt. Now, the interesting part is the guy.
Whoa. I haven't heard this bit because I haven't been keeping up with it at all.
Yeah.
He's back in prison and he's okay
Yeah, he's going to live.
after being
Now-
stabbed 22 times.
Yes.
The guy is
Shit.
Yes. Well, let
Okay,
me
thank
say
you.
let me
Continue.
say this. Let me say this. That could have been an assumption that he was back at the prison. I feel like I saw that, but I want to hold off on definitely saying that part. But I did hear that
I think we should.
yeah, but
Yes.
that he's fine. Like I did hear that today, that he's not dead. He's not even. And
Did
I was
he even
thinking the
get
same thing.
stabbed then?
So what did
You
he
know.
get stabbed with, right? Because even if you're stabbed correctly,
A
even
cotton
with an
bud.
ink pen, even with an ink pen, you would be fine, or you would be at high risk of being killed, depending on
if
where you got stabbed.
Maybe he got stabbed in the gut or something, because that won't kill you right away.
Still, it's like a week later, week and a half later. It's weird, but it gets
I
weirder.
can smell it from here.
Yeah, exactly. So the guy who is alleged to have been the one to stab him, as Jesse Kelly was saying, John Tursak, is a former
Not John
Mexican
Cusack. Let's
mafia.
not get that confused.
Right, not John Cusack, John
Although it is a script.
Turcax. Anyway, he was
Turcax.
as Kelly said, Jesse Kelly, that he was involved in the Mexican mafia for a long time, and he was an FBI informant. So there's a lot of weird stuff. Jesse Kelly laid that out very well. Why would this guy, with 3 years left on his sentence, why would he bother committing another crime like this to get more time if he truly wanted to get out? And then Miriam had just put out on December the 3rd an article saying John Tursak's agreement would continue, quote, as long as the FBI deemed necessary. I also think the idea that this man would be interested in any way in celebrating or commemorating Black Lives Matter on Black Friday and the Black Hand of the Mexican Mafia is completely ridiculous. I think that tells us even more that this is some sort of nonsense setup. Now, there's still question, is Derek Chauvin did that even happen? And are they just trying to use this as a way to get him out of prison because he was also an op?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense if a FBI resource, whatever you call it, goes and stabs him 27 times, whatever you said. 22 times, you know,
Master number 22. Remember that.
Yes.
in all the right places so he doesn't die. You know.
Yeah.
Baby got stabbed in all the right places.
Oh, yeah. So I was correct. If NBC is to be believed, which they're obviously not, but he apparently is released from the hospital and is back in prison. So, and that is posted by New York Post and NBC News. So I obviously don't believe them, but let's just say the official story is that he's back. So I also agree that sounds completely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just go right back to the very beginning? Did they say Derek Chauvin was shivved?
Shivved.
Yeah.
What? I have not heard that expression.
That's prison vernacular for stabbed.
Okay.
Well,
Just wanted to
specifically
check I had the right word.
with a shank,
Like a makeshift,
a homemade
something that
makeshift.
you make homemade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could
Right.
have like used an ink pen, for example, and
Yeah.
sanded it
Mhm.
down somehow, or even
Can
melted
of tuna
down.
bent into the right
Yep,
shape.
yep,
Yeah, whatever they
exactly.
do.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
that's referred to as a shiv. Yep.
And yeah,
So
shout out to Mariam Henane, because she was actually our very first guest, even before
yes,
Podmother. Monica.
yes, she was, and she, we were super unknown at that time, and she
Yeah.
didn't care. She
Union of the
spent
Super Unknowns.
yeah, she spent a long time with us explaining, and has been really amazing every interaction I've had with her since then. And then she's posting a ton of stuff about this, deep dives on her Substack. So I encourage everyone who's interested in this story to subscribe to her Substack. That's where I got a lot of this information, and I just think it's very
Yep.
bizarre. And one more quick thing. So some outlets have been describing the John Tursack as white, but he is not white. If he's half Hispanic in his photo, he looks Hispanic, then why would they try to be saying that he's a white guy that got involved with the Mexican mafia? The whole thing's weird.
I mean, that's a pretty common demographics thing. Mexican Americans are sometimes considered to be white. I don't know when that started, but it's a thing. And if you'll notice, whenever you fill out an official form somewhere and it's asking you for your ethnicity, a lot of times it'll say white, and then you have to pick between Hispanic and non-Hispanic white. So
Yeah.
I think it's
What
just,
shade of white are you?
yeah.
I would say
It's-
in normal
more like a cream.
circumstances,
Beige.
Blanco. I would say in normal circumstances that would be possible, but in this particular case, especially when you know that there is a highly racial element and there's a racial division between ethnicities in prison, it's pretty important to get it right, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, where are they getting that information from? Just a form and that was on file at the prison or something? Who knows who filled that
I
out?
don't know.
Probably wasn't even him. But if you remember the guy that shot Trayvon Martin,
George
He was-
Zimmerman.
George Zimmerman, he was considered white by a lot of people, and he was
Yeah.
clearly Hispanic.
Zimmerman? Clearly
Yeah.
Hispanic. Okay. All right.
I mean, I can't speak to his last name. Maybe his
No,
dad
that
or
makes total sense.
was not Hispanic, but I mean, he looked Hispanic to most people, but he was considered white,
Yep.
Hispanic
makes
white,
sense.
I guess. So and I remember them making an emphasis of that during the trial in the news in order to stir up more black versus white controversy, of course. But
Yeah, that's this is just full of ritualism. I'm sure Jen's probably got something to
Yep.
say about 22.
I was just getting ready to say.
Jen,
So-
go for it, mate. Shoot.
Yeah, so Jen said 22 times Mexican cartel, and he did say it was a good point about people being in jail. Do we know that they're really there? He said police unions are Masonic
100%.
orders.
Exactly.
He said he is
Mm.
fine, no organs hit, fake.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it stands out like dog's balls when
Yeah,
you know what you're
and this
looking
was-
for, you know.
an experienced assassin, right? An experienced FBI assassin who worked
Well-
in the Mexican cartel for decades.
So the odd thing about that, though, is whenever he originally committed the crime, he told the police or the guards that he would have killed him, but they got there so fast. Then when he was talking to the FBI, he said that he didn't want to kill him, and he had been thinking about this for a month ahead of time, but then decided to do it on Black Friday.
Mm.
Black Friday, 22. Yeah, look, this is all just a... And then the guy returns and he's all okay after 22 stabbings. Not a chance. This is
Yeah.
just us
Yeah.
giving out signs and signals to, further the process in their little sick codes. rituals that they have.
Yes. And I think at maybe even a more basic level that that something is up with Derek Chauvin. Either they tried to finish him off because he finished his role in the op, or they're trying
Or he's
to
still
allow
playing
him
it.
to get out of jail. Yeah. Yep. So I think all of that is on the table for what's
Or
going on here.
he's dead and there's no one really there in prison, or he's down the bunker. He's earned his seat. He's probably a few rows back from the big guys, but they've still got
he's
waiters,
definitely
cocktails.
he's definitely
He's a made man
an employee
in the organization.
of the Predator class. But the other
security.
thing that I think is interesting is that he's referred to as the warlord of Precinct 3 as a police officer in Minneapolis. And the other weird thing, I mean, there's just so many with this whole case, but was that he was former military. So I think in any of these situations that especially a former military who's involved in something like this, that you have to consider the potential that they are purposely involved in black ops. And for people, I don't think anyone watching this is going to be skeptical, but there is precedent for that. There's a term, it's called being sheep dipped. It was created in Vietnam whenever Laos did not want military officials in their country. So what they did was say, oh, they're not military. They work for a private business. The private business was Lockheed Martin. Okay. So they're in bed together. So that comes from that. Precedent has been set.
Or many others that could be named. Yes.
Yes. And there's precedent and information and evidence associated with Timothy McVeigh that he was involved in black ops for the OKC bombing. And he also happened to be at Waco during that. So
these are just sort of like the rock stars of terrorists, because really in one sense these are the ones that kind of make the headlines, like the Chers and the Madonnas of the music industry, but they're the false flaggers in that industry. They make the headlines, but can you imagine how many other operations go on that are just everyday-ish type, sort of run-of-the-mill, file your nails, quickly go and kill somebody and then come back to put your second coat of nail polish on.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it just happens all the time, these operations. And
this reminded me of one more thing that I wanted to bring up, was because Derek Chauvin and George Floyd both worked as bouncers at the nightclub. So you have an ex-con and a cop working at the nightclub as bouncers, and they apparently don't know each other.
That came out extremely early in the piece too. I mean, that was sort of like, wow, that's
one of the
first
meant
questions. To know that one too, aren't we?
Exactly. But what
all
the
chasing
other
the rabbit
weird element here is that particular nightclub was associated with the Sinaloa drug cartel, which is a Mexican cartel. So you have that potential tie-in. And I was asking Jen, what was the difference between a Mexican mafia and one of the cartels? He said the cartels tend to be more Latin American and the mafia tends to be more European. So in this particular case, I don't know, but I thought that was another weird connection. So this whole story, we're all on the same page. It stinks to high heaven.
If you want to get technical, the mafia is Italian, right?
Correct. Originally,
they're just referring to the organized crime syndicate he's in as the mafia because it's the Mexican mafia.
But here's the thing. I thought that there was an important distinction to be made here, because normally when they're talking about the Mexican cartels, they call them cartels or they call them gangs. This is the first instance that I recall of hearing something referred to as the Mexican mafia.
Okay. Well, it's something to keep your eye out for.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's like the thing or anything like that, but I thought it was a little thing that made me say, that's weird.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think of the cartels and the mafias and that as sort of really, I mean, government mostly, because they're all working, and I'm not saying that as a joke.
Sure.
They're all working hand in hand with each other. I mean, it's business, basically.
Yeah, no, they definitely, right. They can't exist without the other. Jen said he thought it was important as well, because I'm telling you, if you look at the verbiage that how we hear them referred to in any mainstream capacity, it's never the Mexican mafia. Never.
I know. What I was going to say before, though, was like, unless you're, I think maybe if you're part of that culture or part of that area, or you're political researcher and you understand how it all works, sometimes I just feel like we're only getting, we're sort of falling for the propaganda in areas that we don't know about, in the sense of we don't know much about those particular countries, how the government works, etc. And this might be just normal stuff, like there's cartel everywhere running everything. I mean, found out the other day that the mafia basically runs the olive oil industry, and it's very hard to get pure olive oil. I mean, I never really connected the mafia and well, can't say I never connected the mafia and the food industry, but olive oil in particular, just didn't give it a second thought. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, they're spread over everything. So
Didn't
when
you
it's sort
see
of
The Godfather?
yeah.
Don Corleone.
I mean, you
Yeah.
got what was his the island he came from? Well, it was
Sicily.
Corleone. No, but the name of his olive oil company that he had in that movie that was the front for their
Oh.
far too
organization.
long ago.
I don't remember.
Somebody in the chat probably knows.
Well over 20 years since I've seen it, probably more like
Okay,
25.
so Mike said Mexican cartels control the avocado trade big time.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, but I just think that that's something to keep in mind with the fact that this was not referred to as a cartel, because of in our everyday news, when we talk about the cartels being a big problem, and that is the people that are usually running drugs from Mexico, and the whole country is divided into what cartel controls what area. Then in LA, that's where you have more of a gang culture, but usually it would be referred to as like Mexican Kings or the Crips or the Bloods. So in this
MS-13.
particular
MS-13.
Yes, MS-13, yeah. So they'll have the gang name, or they'll say Sinaloa Cartel or whatever. So Mexican Mafia was a new one for me. It was just weird.
The Latin Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe the landscape is changing, maybe
Yeah, I
it's
was thinking
because
about all those immigrants moving around,
Well,
cartels are generally, and as far as I know, associated with the drug trade, and we know that's in flux right now because of states legalizing marijuana is putting strain on the South American cartels, or at least that's what I've read. So maybe there are organized crime going on that's moving away from that industry. I don't know
well,
what else they'd be doing.
I don't think so, but my question really originally was, is Mexican Mafia a gang? Because apparently that's where this guy originally came from, was
Oh, okay.
California. So if there's a gang name, instead of a card, but I still think it's weird. I still think the whole drug cartel connection, Mexican Mafia connection is weird. Now, I did see something today that the actor, I think it's Danny Trujillo or Trujillo. So he was saying that he was part of the Mexican Mafia, and that was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So
all right,
I don't know.
It is.
Look, I'm sort of, my lines are very blurred between cartel and mafia. I don't see a lot of difference in them because it's all organized crime, and I also see,
Sure.
dare I say, government as also organized crime.
Yeah.
So
No,
I don't
I'm not
see
arguing.
Oh no, I'm not arguing with you either. I'm sort of just thinking, how normal is all this? Like, we're sort of hearing, oh, it's this crowd and this crowd. It's almost like creating division in the understanding of organized crime, whereas it's really, I don't know, to me it's all kind of in the same bucket, really, when the big picture,
It definitely is, because I agree with you that the gangs or the mafia wouldn't exist without cooperation. For 100%, the drug cartels, absolutely,
and with each other too.
They had the
doubt.
green light. Oh yeah, and like this territory and that territory. But that one little wording made me wonder what was different. Why wasn't it referred
You're
to?
right. I'll tell you what it is. The Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, Spanish for the M, is a Mexican-American criminal organization in the United States.
Okay, so
there you go.
interesting that you should say that, because Jen also said he found it La M. He said the same thing. He said it's a U.S.-funded prison gang founded in the U.S.
Llama.
Yep.
So
it's
llamas.
Weird stuff.
It's vicious llamas.
They'll get
It's
you.
supposedly the deadliest and most powerful gang within the California prison system.
Okay.
So
all right.
kudos to them.
Deadly llamas.
Yeah. And thanks
Watch out for those llamas. It's like the drop bears of Mexico.
Yeah.
Don't want to mess with those guys.
All right. So anyway, I know that took up a lot of our time. Sorry about that, but I do think it's a weird, it's another op, obviously, but a lot of weird, interesting threads there.
Yeah. We went from Chauvin to Mexican Mafia and lots in between.
Mhm.
And we talked about rituals, which brings me to my story. There's a new ritual that is sweeping across the magazine stands. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Cosmopolitan put an article recently about it. You can, the article, it gave a step-by-step how-to ritualistically conduct an abortion as according to the satanic church. So
Yeah, I did hear about this.
I'll tell you all about it. So it's the it's on November 16th. They gave a explanation for the process of having a satanic themed abortion, specifically addressed a quote ceremonial service provided by the Samuel Alito's mom's satanic abortion clinic. So it's an abortion clinic set up by this particular sect of the Satanic Church, named after Samuel Alito's mom. Samuel Alito being a Supreme Court justice. So I'll tell you, there's a quote here by someone who went by the name Jessica when she was asked, what's it like to have a satanic abortion? She says, the experience was just very supportive. She says she's not a Satanist, but she decided to incorporate a few ceremonial elements into her solo abortion experience. And why not, she thought. The overall messaging just clicked with her.
Solo abortion experience?
Yep.
Okay.
The post
New term for the Websters?
Yes. Cosmopolitan posted a series of slides elaborating on the steps of how to have a ritualized abortion ceremony as prescribed by the Satanic Temple. This included steps such as staring at one's reflection before taking an abortion pill.
I don't know whether we want to really read this out because it's sort of like
well, they're
manifesting something.
I won't go into all the details, but it provides quotes and things you can say out loud during the ritual. And
incantations.
Yes, it's actually funny that Stella said that because I did read that article, and whenever I was reading it, I was like, like I didn't want to focus on it.
Oh man,
it's so messed up.
And just to be classy about it, the Cosmopolitan article proposed that what if Samuel Alito's mom's circumstances had been different? If her own life had been endangered by the pregnancy, or if the fetuses had a fetal anomaly, or if Rose simply hadn't been ready for a child, what if Samuel Alito had been aborted? And they were just pondering the wonderful scenario of future that we would have had that happened.
Well, we live in a fractal society, so somewhere there's a timeline where that did happen. So anybody who happens to know of anyone who might live on that timeline, let us know.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It also says one of the sides, and this isn't an incantation, but it says, include as many loved ones as you'd light candles, or even dress up, whatever makes you feel empowered.
Bring
the neighbors.
Oh God, it makes me so mad.
That's what it's meant to do. It's working perfectly, Igor.
Oh man.
This is just
hilarious.
This is vibrational shit.
This is the essence of clown world, that what was once a major fashion magazine, Cosmopolitan, because we don't have magazines anymore, would post. I mean, this is ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it's ridiculous.
We're talking about it, so we're keeping it alive. We're adding to the loop.
Job. We pay our bills by talking about this stuff, right?
So something you've been holding out on us, Kills. The Viking has the stash. We need to send a party around.
So, I can probably guess what your guys' opinions are on this, but what do you think is
the level you're talking about, really?
We all have talked about high fashion being satanic and all these imagery that they put out, all this kind of stuff.
Blah blah.
Is this just because this was actually like a Instagram post or something where they wrote this article, is this just like a distant finger of that, or did somebody on there that controls their Instagram account thought it was goofy, or I mean, what do you?
I don't know. Did you go any further into it and see if it had any validity, or is it just an Instagram post?
I didn't see the Instagram post because I'm not on Instagram, but
yeah, right.
I was just reading an article about it. But I don't know. I just thought it was ridiculous.
It is.
And I
especially
can't
now that Henry Kissinger's gone, I thought all that stuff would have just ceased the other day.
Yeah, there just would have been a palpable weight lifted off of the earth once he was gone.
I suppose he left his hang on, let me start that again. He left his adrenochrome stash to somebody in his will, I guess.
Yeah.
So who got that?
You know it.
His
Alex Soros, perhaps.
Yeah. Everybody was like,
"Here you go, son, living in this adrenochrome."
So my take on it is yes. Ando said rage bait, demoralization. Agreed. I also think it's just a furtherance of a degenerate culture and trying to reach young people and normalize this for them. And think like, oh yeah, abortions are so empowering. It's just like the movement before was especially for women, like, oh, having multiple partners is empowering. You go, girl. You're a boss bitch. Yes. It's like that kind of narrative, and it's just chipping away. Like at some point you couldn't possibly be more degenerate, and we're rapidly approaching that point. But I think that is what this is like propaganda for young people to try to get them to accept Satanism that is pushed in their face as just like, oh, they're just being campy. It's just silly. It's just fun. It's empowering.
It's just normalization. The desensitization campaign, that started way, way back. That started back in probably, I would venture to say, when colour TV kind of came in and people went and realized, I think they kind of sort of didn't really want that to happen that much because that was around wartime, and suddenly people saw red blood instead of just black and white tones. Certain things sort of came to life. So I don't know. That's just my guess off the top of my head. But the desensitization definitely has been ramped up, especially with the introduction of video games. I mean, nothing took hold of children. I mean, every generation's got its thing. Let's go back to, our grandparents, I suppose, seeing our parents perhaps, and Elvis and rock and roll. It's like, clutching of pearls and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, it's just, satanic. It's blood inside rubber shoes and fashion. Oh, it's mind-blowingly normalized, and we are being desensitized more, and the new generation being brought up with it. They don't know anything else because...
Right.
Because it's just not the norm to be sent. Stop being a buttercup. Too fluffy.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Give me 1 second. Ando said Edith in All in the Family. He got the wrong name, and he said that in the chat. But he said All in the Family. Basically, one of the characters had an abortion, and that goes to the point that they have been working on trying to normalize this for a really long time, like what y'all were just saying. And then Jen said open recruitment of worship of the self, which I also agree with, and I think that is part of kind of the satanic
narcissism vibe. Generation.
Yeah.
Kills.
Well, I don't remember Edith having an abortion. If she did, it would have been under some circumstance beyond, she just didn't want to have a kid because she was, and we wouldn't have seen that happen on the show.
For sure. Well, for sure, Maude, the show that B. Arthur was in during that same time frame, she had an abortion on that show. Okay. So it was being put out to the public. Now, I don't know about All in the Family. I obviously am familiar with the show, but not that particular storyline. But for sure, B. Arthur, who was the beloved Dorothy of the Golden Girls. And if you ever want to have an episode on the Golden Girls, I'm here for it. I'm ride or die. But she did have an abortion because they have been trying to push this normalization for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, look at the 60s. That sort of all started with the whole freedom me generation because of the pill, a contraceptive pill got introduced. Yep. And but that was all engineered, all social engineering.
Yep.
Tavistock, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Same old actors.
Same old stage.
Yeah. I have I can't imagine young women would see that there's a satanic ritual you can do when you perform an abortion and think, oh, that's what I want to do. But the fact that they add Sam Alito's mom's name to the temple as some kind of, sarcastic jab at Samuel Alito to tickle the leftists, that might bring some in. I can see that, and that's kind of devious.
Co-opting them from the progressive angle.
Right.
Yeah, and let's not forget that they've done, for a long time, they've stripped scripture out of schools. You're not allowed to have any kind of religious guidance anymore. I mean, my kids, once a week, they used to go to a churchy afternoon with all the lovely ladies, like it wasn't sus or anything, all these lovely ladies that used to crochet and stuff. And they'd sort of do their little, scriptural mentorship, as well as crafts and things. And that was kind of cool. It was only like for an hour or something after schools. And it was just that little thing that I thought was going to be good for them, to hear from other people, not just me. I mean, not that I was like fully into teaching them about scripture back then or anything, but I just knew it was going to be a good thing for them to get mentors, other people talking to them about it, because it had been taken from school. So, there used to be lots of TV shows too, like little scriptural type things, which sort of disappeared over the years as well. Sorry, Keels.
Mm-hmm. No, I was going to say, my question was going to be, did they have religious stuff like in your public school, like as part of the, like it was an elective or something, down in Australia? Because certainly that would not have been the case up here, because we have pretty strict separation of church and state kind of things. But I will say that if it was after school, like an after school thing put on by a church, that's probably what I don't know if I can say specifically I'd seen that before, but I don't think that would be that would be outrageous here.
Yeah, I guess my point was sort of like, well, they took it out of the schools, but I personally, as a mother, thought it was still valuable, so I chose to take them somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, sitting there and trying to read the Bible or something to your own children, they're not going to listen to you. You got to have other people where they sort of feel like they've got to, be on their best behavior and listen, do what they're told, sort of thing. I mean, to a point, be polite, whereas they're not like that with your mum or dad. As little kids, they just muck up.
I'm not a super religious person, and I get my feathers get ruffled when somebody tries to preach to my daughter, and
understand that. Yep.
Yeah, it gets under my skin, because I could probably not have a problem with the message necessarily, but there's an element of mind control, for no other reason, no other phrase. But if you get my kid to say a prayer with you in some specific way, then you're like
I totally hear what you're saying, and I'm with you. I'm with you. It's sort of like the message. What you said, the message is the important thing. And when that kind of was taken away, that's you can see when that was eroded. You can see an equal graph line of erosion in society and things falling apart. So whether it was Christian or whether it was Buddhist or whether it was whatever label you want to stick on, well, man sticks on it, or religiosity, the message itself was eroded and taken away. So that's the structure of society, which has then fallen apart, and that's a shame. So,
I wanted to chime in with Keel and say, if you think somebody preaching to your kid is bad, wait till you find out what public school was designed to do.
I know.
Exactly.
I know. I had to say it. I also wanted to say, it's a great point. It's a whole episode's worth, honestly, because the agendas were many. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Ando said it was called Maud's Dilemma. It was Maud that he was thinking of. And then I also wanted to say
Maud's
that
Dilemma.
Jen over on Rumble said this is where being from a Catholic country was good. Growing up, it was considered extremely bad, at least in my family. What I think abortion meaning, so that, you know, even if you don't necessarily agree, but having that, like what Stella was saying, some faith grounding seems
foundation
better
just
to me. Yeah.
I mean, like Jesus himself, he never pushed anything particularly. He lived by example, and he spoke in parables, and it was sort of, you had to seek to find what he was trying to say, and you just had to look and watch. So that's sort of a good foundation, but then, you know, that it's been churchified and indoctrinated. So that's
Yeah,
the division. That's where people have to just make their own choices and, you know, be cool about some things, but stick to other foundational necessities.
Yeah.
It's got to be some structure.
I'm no biblical scholar, but didn't he push over those tables inside the temple that the money counters were working on, or something like that?
Flip the tables.
Flip the table. He went, Gah!
Yeah, because they were holding a market inside a sacred temple, and that was like, well, that's what's happening now. Money is the root of all, you know, the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not money itself. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. So it's the love of money, and that's why, you know, he was just the only time he ever really got angry, I believe, in the Bible that we know of. And it was totally justified because it was, you know, taking advantage of the Father's holy house, basically. Yeah. Which, you know, I also see as, you know, desecrating your own temple, which is, you know, smoking, drinking, doing all those things, eating crappy food, not looking after your body. So it's sort of a manifestation of that as well. That's
I was thinking about this morning, as if I was talking to myself in the car, and you know, if you're trying to explain to somebody why conspiracy theories are real or possible or whatever, you have to look at the motivations of man. And I think I got to a point where I was like, well, it's money, but power also. And then I reached the conclusion that money is really just a means to have more power, because you can have all sorts of money, but it's you have it there in order to have power in one way or another, right? So you can
in this world.
In this world. So well, I'm sure maybe in the next world there's some other form of exchange, right?
How many powerful people do you know that don't have money?
No, but I would say there are probably plenty of people who have more power than people who have more money than they do.
But they wouldn't have the power without money unless they were born into it. Can't have power without money. It's the means. Yeah, it is the means. So it's the love of money, because without the love of money, you're not going to have power.
So I would say the love of power is the next step. Like it's not that they're looking for money. You're not Scrooge McDuck who wants to swim through a pile of gold. You want the power that comes with the money. I think that would be, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm just saying the love of power would be it more than money. But I'm just
well, I mean, here. Like how blessed was Jesus, because he was the most powerful man in history, basically. That's you can't really argue with that. There's a whole time frame based around him. He wasn't a rich man by any means. Poor carpenter. Right. So yeah, he was like, that's the ultimate power, really, is to have power without the means of having to use money to get there, which is the opposite of what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, this conversation, right? Because we talk about all the time the inversion of the natural, the biological, the good, the healthy, and it's a true inversion of that, because he was poor and didn't value money and use money as a way of controlling people and harming other people. And now you have the, you know, even calling them the 1% is ridiculous. It's got to be like a percent of a percent of a percent of the people who have the most wealth, and they quite literally are trying to kill us all. I mean, it's a really interesting inversion, like a direct inversion. 2000 some years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, It is very interesting indeed.
So Burn Babylon Burn says, I think Mammon is even present with Bitcoin. The way Spurgs defend their precious computer money is so Mammon. Someone can blaspheme Jesus in front of them and they won't even blink.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well,
Fake money is fake.
it's all
Yeah.
fake and gay.
And Jen says that both of you are correct at the same time. They're even trying to kill the other rich people. That's what's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Lying.
It's a crazy, crazy time. Oh, and one other thing that I wanted
Parasitic
to,
cannibals.
yeah.
How
The other thing,
oxymoronic and that was that. It's sort of like the Ouroboros. Again, keeps coming up. Eating its own tail, you know.
yes.
Just always
The
comes
other
up.
thing that I wanted to say is that when I was in, like middle school, high school, and college, I liked Cosmopolitan magazine. And I was just thinking about this today when I was walking my dogs, that there was actually something valuable that I got from those magazines, believe it or not, because it was the idea. At this time, it was dealing with like your self-esteem and your presentation, and basically they advise you to fake it till you make it. So like even if you're terrified, even if you don't want to speak to somebody, even if you're really scared, to act like you are confident. And I was thinking, I was like, how weird is that? That actually got some good advice, but I wouldn't touch those magazines with a 10-foot pole nowadays. If I did, it would be to put it in the trash.
Yeah, that's the best place.
Maybe recycling, but I think recycling
Well,
is fake and gay too. So
I wouldn't touch them either because
Movies.
they're always full of those cologne samples. So yeah, the best place for them is a trash because it'll help the stink in there.
We used to have around about that time or a little bit later, we used to have something called Clio magazine in Australia. And it
Cleo,
was
yeah.
quite controversial because that was sort of like the first woman's magazine, sort of kind of in competition with, go gal, with Playboy and that kind of Mayfair and Penthouse and all that kind of thing. Because it was the first magazine, I think, in the world to have a male centerfold every month.
Wow.
The triple fold. Of course, there always used to be like a jaguar's head or something in the way, which was probably a good thing for some of those. I mean, yeah, you know.
okay. What was it called again, Stella?
Cleo, CLEO. Yeah. So that was very much like a cosmopolitan. It was always Cleo and Cosmopolitan. That was always on the coffee table, girlfriend's house, that kind of thing.
Hilarious.
And you go and have a beer with your girlfriend, you know.
Yeah.
So it was, just look at the
That's very
pictures.
funny.
Oh, I
Mhm.
just read it for the articles. But, I
It's
mean,
just
women
the
would
articles,
generally read it for the
hun.
articles.
That's
Jack Nicholas, I think that's his name. Very famous Australian actor.
golfer?
He was no. That is it Jick
Greg Norman.
Nicholas.
Jack
Jick
Nichols.
Nicholas.
Jack Nicholson was it an American
Okay.
actor?
Jack Nicholson is not the guy. It's Jack
Okay.
Nicholas. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholas. Oh my gosh. Okay,
I'm gonna see
Australian.
if I can
Peter McNichol.
Please do. No, he's really, you'd know him straight away if you saw him.
Nolte.
He was in The Man from Snowy River, and he's in all
Okay.
the really probably with Russell Crowe, many movies with Russell Crowe, I'd say.
Okay,
Gladiator.
Very famous. I don't know about Gladiator. It's not very
Nicholas
Australian.
A Beautiful Mind.
Australia.
That's definitely not very Australian.
He's just messing with you, Stella. Just ignore him.
Kurt Russell.
I
That's
don't
who
know
you're
these
thinking.
movies because I don't watch them, but going by titles,
'Cause he-
Beautiful
'cause he
Mind
was
doesn't
in,
sound like an Aussie movie to me.
Because he was in Escape from New York. Kurt Russell. That's who you're thinking of.
No,
Okay.
Jack Nicholson. He's like he'd always recite Australian poems as well. So his voice was just as famous as his acting and his face. He was like, if you sort of like a Crocodile Dundee. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I can't think of it. So I haven't heard of his voice for so long, or his name for so long. Jack Nicholas. I'm sure it's Nicholas, but different spelling.
Okay. The
Nicholas.
only thing that I'm finding is our Jack Nicholson.
Australian,
Whenever
Aussie actor.
I did, I
Yahoo
said Jack Nicklaus,
Serious.
Australian actor, and I'm getting Jack Nicholson.
You're kidding. He's not, he's
No.
like an epic legend of Australia. He must, and I can't think of his name, but I
Okay,
know
I'm
who
gonna-
I mean.
Yeah, I'm going to keep looking, but I did want to say that Jen said they pushed empowerment so they could push the degeneracy at the same time, worship of self, because most millennials struggle with self-esteem. Yeah, and let's tie that in with public
Yeah,
education.
yeah.
It's designed to stomp the self-esteem out of you. And he said, so we are weak to the idea of who we are, and it's a static thing. We like identities. He said the only Aussie movie I know is about a giant boar. And Ando said Paul Hogan.
That's called Razorback, that film. That was directed by Russell Mulcahy in the 80s, and Russell Mulcahy was a very famous music video director, and then he sort of went into movies. So I actually really loved Razorback because I was right into lighting and everything back then, and I just thought it was beautifully lit, as you'd expect a music video producer to be in a movie.
Is it Jack Thompson?
Yes! I told you it was Nicholson.
Okay. Now, I'm going to...
Thompson. So you can see how I got confused.
Yeah, those Americans with their media propaganda are getting to you, and who can blame you?
Yeah, I think I got a laser ray. That's the man. There's the gentleman.
Yeah, he's a handsome. Look at the chin on that guy. You could, do something with whatever you do with something sharp.
Younger
He almost
picture
looks
of him. I don't
American, doesn't he,
recognize
with that chin like that?
Yeah, okay, so I'll see if I can find younger.
Yeah, look, Man from Snowy River, if you put Jack Thompson, Man from Snowy River, that'll be a real typical, with the Akubra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, anyway, in the meantime, shall I talk about what's
give
going
us
on down here?
Let's talk about the weather.
Before we run yeah. Let's talk about weather manipulation, possibly even. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this is just sort of it's not like a big breaking story or anything. It's just something that I'm going to keep my eyes on. We've got this record breaking first tropical cyclone to form in December in an El Nino year. That's a very specific record. So anyway, let me read that again. Yeah. Cyclone Jasper is the first tropical cyclone to form in December in an El Nino year in Australia. Can we make it a little bit more specific?
At 3:00, when the wind was blowing from the south, and there were two people named Nick standing on the ledge that actually witnessed it.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, this thing's sort of supposedly they're just hyping it up a lot, and really, I mean, it's still at a Category 1, which is sort of not much, really. It's 120 kilometers an hour. I mean, we had winds like that down in Tasmania, belting against it used to be pretty windy down there. I seem to remember it got up to about 130, 140 at one stage, and that was nothing that unusual on the East Coast, and they were all westerlies, so you can imagine what the West Coast is like. But yeah, you had to build your house pretty solid down there because of the winds, which we did, but that's off the track. Anyway, so Cyclone Jasper is just something that's sort of, they're hyping up, they're making everyone, it's going to intensify, should be Category 4 by Friday. The trajectory, the supposed trajectory that's going to happen. But I don't know, these things just sort of get me thinking, it's coming up to Christmas. We've got memories of Cyclone Tracy, which was a very bad cyclone back in 1979, perhaps. Long time ago. But it's really stuck in the Australian memory. And happened right on Christmas as well. There's been a number of things like that happen right on Christmas Day, which, no one really questioned about anything back then, but now looking back with knowing what we know. So I don't know, I just sort of think these things are coming, but they've got the technology to head off cyclones and things. You've only got to do a really quick little search on Google. It's readily available information of things, experiments they've done, some things that went wrong, which were quite a long time ago, so there's a fairly good chance that they've kind of figured that out by now. They've only had about 80 years. So it just makes me think, okay, well, if they've got these supposed weather manipulations that can happen from satellite now, as well as ionizers on the ground and from ships and everything as well, then why don't they just, why don't they talk about, well, we might think about heading it off somewhere, perhaps, instead of trajectory of it's going to hit land in Cairns on Saturday.
Yeah.
How do you know that? It might die out.
Yeah. Are you done with the
tactics.
original?
That's all it is.
Part?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Because what's really interesting about it is, well, I don't necessarily think it's going to be some sort of Acapulco like hurricane, which went from literally like nothing to a Cat 5 overnight. It was like that. It took them totally off guard. They had no time to prepare. It was a highly, highly unusual event. Now, in this case, it sounds, I'm with Stella, more like fear mongering. And it's like, especially anything they can do to try to shit on your holidays. They love that.
Yeah,
right. Like they
exactly. Yeah.
really love that. So it would not surprise me if that's what it was in this case, because I think if they really want to get you, like what happened with the Lismore floods, what happened with Hawaii, with Maui, what happened in Acapulco, all of that stuff was sudden. So I think maybe that's something that I'm starting to put together. If they're broadcasting it, it's probably bullshit. The real shit, it's going to sneak up on you.
That Acapulco one, didn't they sort of say a few days before that was kind of stirring up a little bit, and then it sort of just suddenly got worse, or did it just suddenly hit with no warning?
So they knew that there was a tropical system off the coast, and that it was probably going to be making landfall, but no prediction whatsoever that it was going to get really, really bad like it did. Because normally, because we have them too on the east coast of the United States, but specifically like the southeast United States, because the water's warmer. It's off the Gulf of Mexico.
Certain times of year. Yep.
Yeah, you have a hurricane season, which goes from, I don't know, maybe like May or June to November. And
a bit the opposite of us, yeah, because ours is just starting.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. So that would track. So
monsoon.
Normally,
season.
though, they are telling you it's out there. You know it's out there for a long time, and then they'll tell you like, we predict that it's going to strengthen before it makes landfall, and it could be, in this range. Whatever.
I know how they usually work, but I'm just sort of pointing this out now because I'm going to keep an eye on it and see what they do with it. Because the fact that they're pointing it out and they're, trajectories is one thing. And Cairns, like, I'm not saying that Cairns isn't important because there's lots of people up there, but there's not that many people. It's like it's a very north, very out of the way kind of place. It's not like it's going to have a big impact like if it hits Sydney or Brisbane or something like that. So, and I'm not also not saying that it's been created either, because this is, again, like we were just saying, monsoon season, and it's quite normal to have this kind of activity at this point just because of the way the world is, if it's a sphere.
So it's a test run then. They just picked
I'm just gonna be interesting to see what they do with it, because is it gonna do something wild at the last minute? Is it just going to be another fearmonger that fizzles into nothing? Yeah. So I just wanted to point it out and just sort of watch it over the next few days.
I think it's very interesting that you brought that up, and I'm curious to see where it will go. Hopefully nowhere, but yeah, in Acapulco, my understanding was that they had no idea. They thought they were getting a tropical depression, which just still cause, some flooding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But nothing compared to a Cat 5. And it was like a matter of hours that it strengthened to that and made landfall. It was super weird.
I just wonder, that's sort of, I'm kind of wondering if we might get a little repeat of that.
Yeah, so Stella, you've been studying these man-made storm systems for a while now, and I would consider you more of an expert than I am. So there's a question that's been bugging me for many years. Do you think George W. Bush invented Katrina, like the hurricane, as so many people claimed at the time?
Okay. Well, I mean, George W. Bush is just a puppet, isn't he? So.
And then my second question,
I guess, would be the technical answer, but not saying it wasn't invented, but probably not by him.
Second question,
Mr. Scullin.
Can we, as Donald Trump suggests, dissipate a hurricane with a nuclear bomb?
They did try that. I believe there is still tests to be done, but you can actually read about that if you go to Jim Lee's climateviewer.com and you type in, because he's got a really, really good search on his, like, I always go to him because he's my go-to guy for this sort of information. He's been at this for years, and so he's my go-to guy, come on.
Yeah.
If you go to his website, he's got a little search thing, and you can type that in, and it's sort of like, it brings up like an internal Google search, I suppose you'd say, well, it's actually DuckDuckGo, but it's just searches his site. So it's really cool. So yeah, I just went up there and typed in cyclone. Just typed in the word cyclone. And I mean, stacks of things come up. You could be here all day. I hate going to his site. It's a really good way to spend like endless amounts of time. So I mean, you could go to Project Cirrus, which is the first hurricane cloud seeding experiment. There's PDFs, the weakening of hurricanes via marine cloud brightening, or MCB. See, this is my point. If it's going to be a detrimental land disaster, then it appears that they've been at this for a while. It appears that why don't they sort of zoom in and go, oh, we'll save the day. But not that I want them to, but in theory, I just wonder why they don't. And it's because they don't really want to save the day. They want to clear things for this and that, I suppose, as it's been seen or observed in the past. There just happens to be some coincidental paths of disasters in line with things like putting in high-speed rails and smart cities. There's no denying it.
Yep. Of course, my questions were facetious, but still,
I'm
you know,
always willing to answer a facetious question with a facetious answer.
it's
Well,
weather manipulation is a real thing. So
yeah,
It certainly
100%.
is.
And Jen said, OMG, what a good question. I think so by proxy, but yeah, Stella is the storm master. Agreed.
Yeah,
Yes.
let me just address that. No, definitely no expert, not by any means. I have barely scratched the surface. I'm a very long time storm watcher because I've very much enjoyed doing that. I've been on land quite a bit of my time, and there's nothing nicer than rolling a big fatty with a big, cup of coffee or something, and that probably means something else in your country, whatever. And just watching the clouds come in, or the storms, or what have you. I love doing that. So
Sounds
then when you start
awesome.
to notice all these weird things that are happening, these new clouds that they've given names to, and it's like, oh, hang on, geez, that looks like a scalar wave to me. Oh, it's this cloud, right? Oh, okay, all right, we'll go with that. And
Yeah.
weird colours in clouds that you never saw before, rainbowy sort of sheens, like you'd see, fuel on the top of water
yeah,
in the so-called firmament up there. That's another show.
you know what? Maybe nature just changes. Like
Yeah,
science,
that's right. Yes.
right?
Yeah, I'm sure that
Yes.
it does. So Jen said that's how he feels about everything, like he's barely scratched the surface. And he said a big fatty is a big joint.
Oh, is it? No.
Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
not tobacco, and I know that's what you meant.
That is,
Yes.
'cause that's all we're allowed to have.
Yes, because marijuana is highly
This is
illegal.
many years ago, by the way.
And
And
a long time
dangerous.
ago for the feds that are listening to this show.
Marijuana is very dangerous. We should all
It is.
avoid it.
Turns
Yep,
you
we
into
don't
condone
psychotic
it.
killers.
Mhm.
And on that,
psychotic killers.
on that very dark and serious note, I'd like to thank Ashley, Think Change Repeat, and Stella Q for your stories and insights this evening.
Oh, just one thing.
Yes.
Ashley, where can we be found?
I'm so happy that you asked. I think you might have scooped kill, but that's okay. You can find
I might have
us
saved his ass, actually.
at unionoftheunknowns.com. That's our Linktree page where you can find all the myriad ways to get in touch with us, including the link to our Discord where we would be happy to have you. You can also sign up for the Union of the Unknowns newsletter, and you can find me handling our Twitter account at Union Unknowns over on X Twitter. Thanks.
No, Wackers.
Thank you, Ashley. No wuckas, Stella. Thank you, Stella. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. And thank you, everyone out there. We are the Union of the Unknowns, and we are out.
Love your guts.
Not Your Mama's News has been a production of the Union of the Unknowns podcast. New episodes are available weekly on all your favorite podcasting networks.